Hey class, what's going on? Let me move this over. Sorry about having to cancel last week's live stream, just wasn't feeling that great. How's everyone doing today? I'm going to start by downloading your guys's. Well, let me check to make sure the live stream is up and running. Okay, cool. We're good. Let me download your guys's questions for the week. Downloading the submissions. In the meantime, how's your guys' weekend? Does anyone get psyched about Halloween? I get super excited about Halloween. I'm into it. You'll see my collection of spooky attire will come out. This is not one of them, but, you know, I'll start wearing Halloween stuff. Like shirts. I don't wear, like, fancy earrings or anything like that. All right, it's downloading. Let me check to make sure there aren't any questions. Looks good so far on Slack. I've been seeing everyone's real and surreal projects coming through, and they're looking pretty sweet. You guys are doing some really cool stuff. Sorry, guys, I had to mute my mic for a second. I was not talking to you guys, I was talking to my wife. Okay, so is it done downloading yet? Let's check. Lena's in the chat. What's up, Lena? Lena asked for the Real and Surreal project. Hold on one second, Lena. Just do this. Extract all. Yes. Just delete this and go in here. Yeah, for the real and surreal projects, do we prefer both scenes to be combined in one video or have them in separate? One video. On the module in the deliverables panel, I have it selected, I think, as one video. I think I have it. This is the only time I'm having you guys, also, just like a side note, this is the only time I'll probably have you guys submit the C4D project files with the assets in it. The reason being, is because some of these, this one in particular, like, I just wanted to make sure that you guys know how to save folders or Cinema 4D files with the assets included in case you ever had to pass those off to anyone. So it was just like a check on that. But most of the time I'm not going to have you guys upload your Cinema 4D files. So this is probably the only instance in class you'll have that. I think I said upload both your real and source. I didn't specify. So yeah, one video. If it's two videos, I'm not going to get upset because it's not specified in the deliverables, but it just says upload them both. But yeah. Okay, cool. So let's kind of jump into these questions real quick. I think that, let me see how many projects I have from the Real and Surreal. I've only got 7 submissions so far for the Real and Surreal project, so we're waiting for a few more. So I'm probably gonna go over your projects and review them on Thursday's class. And today I'm just gonna do the participation questions and then um jump into our next project. So that way it gives people a couple more days to turn those in and get live feedback in class. With that feedback, because I did grading this weekend on both the bouncing ball and on the typography projects. And if I give you feedback in class, I just write a note in your, like, in the comments. It's like, hey, I gave you feedback in class, watch that feedback and implement that feedback for when we have a revision round. If I didn't see yours in class, or I didn't review it in class, I give you information along with the rubric, right? So I use the rubric to grade, and then if there's any issues within it, I'll write it where, like, the issues and what needs to be fixed in the side comments on the rubric itself, right? So if you didn't receive those comments, it's likely that I reviewed your project in class, and so I gave you that time, me talking about it and explaining what I would like to see. And then these changes, I've had a little bit of confusion and some questions coming my way. And Keith, I see your question. I will answer that in just a second. Welcome, by the way, to the chat or to class, right? But back on track to what I was saying. So I mentioned in the feedback on your projects that I like to make these changes for when we have a revision round. So this is a normal thing that you're going to see in any design job, where you're going to turn in a project and they're going to have feedback on that project. They're going to want something changed, want something moved around, yada, 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 tons of different stuff. You know, sometimes you'll have less feedback, sometimes you'll have a lot of feedback. It just kind of depends. It depends on if the client's reviewing it, right? The client might have feedback, then your producers or, you know, your boss, the lead graphic designer, lead designer, whatever, they're going to have feedback for you. And they're going to give you that feedback. And then it's your job to implement those changes to the project that you did, right? And so that's what your next step is. But I'm not having you guys turn that in right away. I will have a revision round project in a couple weeks coming up here, where you're going to take all of the feedback that I've given you on your past projects. So the bouncy ball, the typography, the one that's coming up today, future projects, your real and surreal ones, and you're going to implement those changes that I gave you on your grades, right? Whether it's in the rubric or in the videos. And you're going to make those changes, and then you're going to submit it as its own separate, it's going to be its own separate assignment, right? So the revision changes. There are some times where people get 100% and there's no changes. That's rare cases, right? Usually everyone has feedback. If you do not have feedback, just still include that, um, as at least right now. I'll have to go check back on the revision round, but you're going to still include that work in your revision round. And you just don't have to make changes, right? But if you got feedback on it, you have to implement those changes. And if you don't, you will have points deducted for not making those changes. Why do I do that? Right? Because obviously I said that this happens in the real world. And if you go into a project and someone gives you changes and you don't make those changes, I mean, you're going to lose jobs quickly. So I'm trying to prep you guys for the situations that you're going to come into in any kind of creative field job, right? Whether you're working as a designer and only doing graphic design, whether you're working as an animator, whether you're working as like someone in game design, it doesn't matter. You're going to have feedback and you're going to have changes to make. And it will sometimes go back and forth to where you're like, why are they making these stupid changes? I don't get it. if they ask to do it, they're the ones paying the money. You just make the changes, right? And so that's kind of what I'm prepping you guys for right now. You're doing the projects, you're getting feedback, and then we're going to have another assignment later on down the road where you're going to implement those changes and resubmit those videos. If you got a low grade on those, I will allow you to resubmit the project for if you make the changes ahead of time and you want to adjust your grade, I will allow you to resubmit that project to me via Canvas like inbox. Just send it in my inbox, be like, hey, I made these changes. I want to see if I can increase my grade. Will it be a 100% grade? No, but it'll just boost your grade up a little bit more. I will give you guys that opportunity to do that. But based on what I see in the rubric and stuff is generally how I grade your stuff. Keith said here, I had issues sending the C4D files and had to zip them up. That's okay. Sometimes how do I say it? Like different websites and like cloud storage services, things like that will only allow you to upload a certain file size, right? Like, so my email through Gmail will only allow me to send something that's up to like 10 megabytes, which is nothing, right? That's very small. And so you'll have to compress those files into a zip folder or into whatever Mac I like Apple products compress them down into some kind of like zipped up folder, right? In order to compress the file size down and send it off to someone. So that's fine. That's what I would prefer you guys do. And then I can just open it up and make sure everything's in there. Lena did that for me. If for some reason that's not working, then try and submit them each separately, right? But other than that, if you have to zip them up, that's okay. Lena also asked, what if we already implemented those changes early on in the same week of those projects? Would we still have to make more revisions during the revision round? No. So if you've already implemented the changes that I've given you, then just save it. You can save that and ready to go for the revision round, and you'll turn that in with the revision round. It saves you time when that project comes around. So it's actually smarter to do it that way, getting if you have time in between or you're like bored or whatever, can't figure out what to do, hey, let me make these quick revisions. And um and then I'm going to save myself time when it comes to the revision project. I'm going to already have it done. I'll just plop it down to my timeline, bada bing bada boom, send it in. All right. So I would personally do it that way. That's how I work. I don't like to have lingering work. Sorry guys, my Apple Watch. But I don't like to have lingering work like on my mind, especially if they're quick edits. Sometimes they are not quick edits. Sometimes they're going to be edits that take a long time. And so you can always work on those in stages too, right? If you're like, oh, I only got enough time, 5 minutes right now. Let me fix the small problems first and then move to the larger problems. So that's always, your tactic will vary just kind of depending on what kind of feedback you get on your projects. If you had a missing section on your project, right? Like if you didn't provide, there were 5 scenes that were supposed to be included on the typography project. Some students didn't submit all 5 scenes. You'll get 0 points for those scenes that are missing, right? And that'll greatly impact your grade. So I would start like checking the rubrics, making sure you've got everything on there, checking the deliverables thing, making sure that everything's in your project before you send it off, right? The best thing to do before you send projects off is rewatch them and then you send them in. I know it gets boring after you've watched the same thing 10 million times, but it's my opinion on that. And that way you're not missing things and you're like, why didn't I get this? I already did it, but you obviously have missed it on the render somehow. It's not there. And I'm human. I make mistakes as well, and I'm willing to correct those mistakes if you ask me about them. If you ask me about what kind of feedback you got and why I did that, I can explain it to you. And if it was a mistake I made, I'll obviously change that and apologize. So, but yeah, good questions there. Keith, were you able to send? You were able to send it when it was zipped up, though, correct? All right, guys. While I'm waiting on that, I'm going to play. Cool. Yeah, Keith said yeah. I'm going to play these questions here. I think I'm going to start doing this where I split up the questions and the feedback for projects so that you guys can um have a little bit of time since we're doing like date ranges of when these projects get handed in. You just couldn't send the folder. Oh yeah, because the folder size is too big and it's all like, nope, stop, can't send that much. Got to compress it. So, all right, Audrey's question.
This is for the assignment. For my question is for the surreal assignment. For the real and surreal assignment, doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what we put in the surreal as long as like it's like not real and like weird. And for the second one, um, for when I was saving the project with assets, um, it all of us like
Are you guys hearing the audio in here? I'm not seeing it on my thing. Here, let me try it again.
this is for the assignment. Um, for my question is for the surreal assignment. For the real and surreal assignment, doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what we put in the surreal as long as like it's like not real and like weird. And for the second one,
Thank you, guys.
um, for when I was saving the
Yeah, I mean, they can be real objects, but like skewing things to make them look surreal, right? So surrealism is different than abstract, right? I think I described this in my video that I had posted on there, but like abstractions are something that kind of represents what that object is, right? Like, so this guitar that you have in the background, it could just be like a square with some like lines sticking out of it, would be abstraction of what a guitar is. Surrealism is like taking the things that the object is and skewing them a little bit. So like if there's bananas bigger than people, I mean, that's not realistic, or let's say you have like a cage, like a little hamster cage, and in that hamster cage is a human and not a hamster, and the hamster's like in the room hanging out playing video games. That's surrealism. So it can be all sorts of objects in there, but like messing around with size, scale, the amount, things like that, can represent surrealism. I really suggest to go on to the Slack channel and look at other student surrealism projects, and you'll see some stuff in there. I will say though that your realistic room looks great. A lot of students really like these projects because they're like a Sims game or like any kind of builder game, which is fun to me as well. So um you're like, ooh, I'm gonna throw this in there, I'm gonna throw that in there, but this looks great. And the reason I really like this scene in particular is because it looks lived in, with just like the bed with the messy thing. I mean, you guys can also think of that. It doesn't have to be like some pristine looking room, right? But I'm gonna go ahead and play the rest of your question, Audrey.
project with assets, um, it all of us like my files have like an X mark around it because I think they're not saving fully. I think because they're not saving fully, so I don't know if that's a problem or not, or if it I don't really know if it's not if it is saving or not. So I wonder if there's a way to fix that, but I'm not sure. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that I have not ran into that issue. Did Lena or Keith, did you run into that issue when saving your stuff with that your project with assets? Audrey, what you can do is you can send me that file in Slack and I'll try and open it and see if it works. Or you can send it to me in my email and we'll see if it works that way. but that's kind of odd. Usually, I mean, that was the status. Like if I look on the file, the status was like that it's not um synced or that it's not working for some reason. Usually that's not the best symbol. So we'll try and figure that out for you. But yeah, send that to me and we'll see if you had a memory issue. How did you fix that memory issue, Keith? Did you clear some kind of did you just restart your computer or something? All right, Lena's question.
Hi. So I had a few questions when I was working on the realistic project. First of all, I just got this random pop-up that said the scene has been upgraded to the latest format and by required by Redshift. When saved, this scene will become incompatible with previous versions of the plugin. Please ensure you keep backups of the original scene files in case you need to revert to a previous version. And I know you mentioned that we don't have Redshift, so should I be worried about this?
I would you've got a 4 terabyte memory. I'm sorry, I'm jumping into Keith. Hard drive. Okay. Um oh, you ended up going to buy one. Correct. And that might have been an issue because these projects, when you start stacking more assets into them, become bigger and bigger. So, um, it could have been that because you don't have enough space on your computer. So if that's the case, Audrey, we'll talk about that. Lena, did you search this issue? The scene has been upgraded to the latest format version 8. Required by Redshift. Okay. When saved, the scene will become incompatible with previous versions of the plugin. Please ensure that you keep backups of your original scene files in case you need to revert. Um, let's look it up. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it should affect your project either because you're not using any Redshift materials. If you were using Redshift materials, I would be more concerned about this. I'm trying to see if there's something online that I can read right now. What you can do is if you're concerned about that, save the project in a couple different locations, right? So maybe you have like your hard drive, your external hard drive, and then you can also save it to your computer somewhere, maybe in documents or create a new folder. Oh, I'm so sorry. A new folder like labeled projects or something on your computer itself and then store it there just in case. Um but I don't think it should be an issue either. You can download Redshift if you want to on your guys' computer, and you can start watching those Cineversity videos that talk about how to use Redshift. We can start looking into those. I can, like, if I go to, first of all, let me show you guys down here. I mean, it's obviously going to be what your computer can handle and how much memory and room your computer has to download it. Of course, it wants me to update. Always, this app, I swear, updates every week. There's like always a new update out. Also, I think I'm going to have to, sorry about that for a second, installing that right now. Let me play the rest of your question though, Lena.
This pop up, and what can I do about it? Because I did continually save my projects. And after that, when I got into OBS and I dragged in this rug texture to this mat, is there a way to just isolate one pattern and have just one pattern be on there instead of having two? And another problem, another thing you said was to,
So, when you said you brought the pattern in, what is this pattern supposed to be? Is it on your, let me look in Slack here. Your rugs look nice in here, but it doesn't look, I'm not seeing it. Come on now. Going back to this, you guys can download Redshift here in your Maxon Manager app. And obviously I would update. But then if you guys go to cineversity.com, you guys can watch videos on how to use Redshift materials, which could help. As far as this pattern goes, what kind of pattern did you drag onto it? Oh, it's just called Rugger Carpets inside the asset browser. Okay, let's see if... Let's try and find that and see what it is. Cinema 4D. It's going to make me log in again. I know it. Let me sign in here. Yep, it says you need to activate your license. Okay, this should have worked now. Let's see if it'll work. Come on, let's see if it'll work again. Yeah, I think let's try and figure that out though. Um, Lena said in the chat that she ended up using a different rug, but she just wanted to know. And I agree. Let's see if we can figure out how to isolate that. Okay. I just had to get Cinema 4D up and running. Because some of these rugs have weird... Did you try the tiling stuff like you do with the... Hey, Nakara, what's up? Okay, let's find this rug in the asset browser. Rug. This one. I'm going to have to bring an object into here. Let's just bring a plane on. I've never worked with this, so we're going to find out maybe possibly together. There's a chance that I might not be able to figure it out because some things in here mystify me. Okay, so it's like, I see what you're saying. It's like the old school rounded rug. I remember these growing up in our house. We always had them by the door. Okay, so this is an image and not an actual material. So if you look up here, let me zoom that zooming tool, zoom it. Here we go. Up here, there's it's a difference between a material and an image, right? So an image is something that you're going to want to place inside of the, like a material setting. So let's delete this off of here. And on this plane, let's kind of go in the material manager. Let's throw just like a regular plain material. We'll just create a regular one. Throw it in here. It's actually on the rug, although it looks the same. I'm going to double click on this material and under, let's see if we add it under the bump map. Texture, load image. Could be under, it can be under a couple different things in this section. It's not going to be the bump map actually. It might be the reflectance or luminance. Let's try turning that on. Let's drag this into this. See if that works. Shall you work? So it throws it in there. If we double click on this, because this is like a UV mapping type of material. And the reason you can tell, let me delete this first real quick. The reason you can tell this is a UV mapping material, which UV mapping is equivalent to, if I took an object, let's say, what do I have here? Complicated, right? A complex object like these glasses. And I cut a line down all of the edges around the glasses, around every single part of these glasses, and I unfold it like it were a piece of paper, right? And I fold it into this flat surface, right? So it's now a flat object. And then I essentially texture that object based on like that shape that ends up being unfolded. And that's exactly what's happening here, right? Because you have the rug shape that's been unfolded. You have the top and the bottom, whichever one's the top and whichever one's the bottom. And then you have this line here, right? Which would most likely be the edging around the mat. And so it's all unwrapped, right? And it's laid out flat. And they texture what would be the top and which would be the bottom. And then you apply it to your material based on that. Maybe if there were, this is a TIFF. So this is another image. I don't know what that's going to do. Nothing. Let me see if there's a spot where we can add that into there. And then if not, we'll jump on this later and I'll figure out the answer and make a video for you guys. Let's try it in the, first of all, so with that in mind, right, with the UV mapping in mind, let me kind of bounce right back to what I was to add to that, is that your object's going to have to be that shape of whatever that UV mapping was. So if I wanted it that shape, I would have to round the edges of my, let's go to display, garage shading with lines. We would add some segments to this, probably 40 by 40. And then you would want to round out the edges somehow by like, let me see if I can do that here. Basic. No. So let's see if we can grab these edges still, which we can't. So I would likely go back into object mode, click on this. Let's delete this null. I'm not sure what's there. And then make this an editable object. We're going to go into point mode. And I would actually make this less segments. So a plane. Let's make it 5 by 5. And I would want it to be thinner in width. And then I would hit C to make it an editable object. I would grab these corners, select, select this one and this one. And I would right click and I would choose chamfer. Where is that? Are you not on here? Bevel, extrude, bridge, weld. If you can't find one on here, you can always hit Control C, Shift C, and type it in. Chamfer. Ah, did it work? I'm not sure why I'm grabbing. Can I drop this? Created an object. Never used this one before. There we go. And increase the size of that, right? Probably not. So the polygons here, what you're seeing happening here is where like this chamfer is intersecting with this polygon here. So it's kind of like flipping that polygon inside out, which you don't want to happen. So you don't want to chamfer it beyond whatever your segments are. So it might be best to just have least amount of segments on there. So I would do smaller, well, not the angle, the size to there, and then we want it rounded. Fixed difference. Let's see. Mitering. I mean, let's just start changing that. When you start subdividing it is when it starts smoothing out, right? So you would want to make it obviously the shape of this rug first. And then I think it has to do, you would have to put it into, where does it go? I'm curious as to where it goes now. I'm probably going to put it in the color, in the texture, dropping it down there again. Let's just drop this on here so we can see what's happening at the same time. You can click on any kind of image that you put into like an object or onto a material to edit further. Color profile's fine. Maybe you could edit your image. I don't know why that opens that up. Maybe you could locate the image. Oh, it locates it inside of your... That's odd. Load group. Let me figure that out. I'll figure this out and then I'll make you a short video on how to do that because I don't want to take up all the time with that question, but that's a good one. But yeah, when you see it kind of like pulled apart like that, it's because it's meant for UV mapping, which is a different way to add materials and textures onto objects. Let me go back to your second part of your third part of the question.
Save project with assets. Are you supposed to do that only once after you've finalized your project?
Correct. Yeah.
Or are you supposed to continually save it more than once? Because I've been saving it more than once like this. So I've been just...
That's going to make your file bigger and bigger. So that could be...
renaming to...
That could be a reason why your file size got so large. But what I would do, Lena, is just you can save... and do this. What I suggest doing is you can save incrementally like you're doing, right? Just save Control S, or Controller Command, whatever you're using, a Mac or a PC. And then what you'll want to do is when you're done with everything, you're finalized on that, right? You're going to save that with the assets and then you can send that off to someone, because that way what it could be doing is it could be duplicating all of those assets in those folders that it's creating, because it's going to create subfolders with all of the stuff in it, and all that information. So it could be duplicating that. I'm not sure. I haven't done that before. But what I suggest is just saving it, the project, and then once you're fully done, saving that with the assets.
And just replacing the file.
You can,
I've
I
been
mean,
just
you
been
could do
doing
that
that
too.
every time I think of saving,
You can
just to be
replace it.
safe. And are you able to change the color of the furniture just like we were able to do in the 3D bouncing ball assignment? Also, in your old video, I noticed you were
Yeah.
able to turn on the lights here.
Yeah, you can definitely change furniture color if you just go into the material and you find out, sometimes it'll be color to make sure it would replace okay, yeah. If you're, I mean, if you're replacing the file, then it shouldn't be duplicating all of that stuff on top of it. So you should be fine. As far as the material goes, you're just going to find kind of where it is. If it's like an image applied to that object, then it's going to be harder, because then you're going to have to bring it into Photoshop, or you can add like a color kind of overlay on top of it. But in general, you should be able to change um some of the materials, the majority of the materials. Were you able to do that? Did you try doing that? I'm going to continue playing your question.
How would you do that again? And when I say
Turning the lights on to objects. So let's bring in, not all the objects have lights with them. So let's see. That was a wall lighting, sconce, as they would call it, like this one. Here we go. Let's see. It looks like they have light bulbs in them. Are the bulbs working, though? Let's find that out. So I'm going to unfurl here. I'm going to go to my lights. Go to the light group here. And it looks like one, two, three. Okay, cool. Let's see here. So the lights don't necessarily have an illumination in them. You would see more of an object like these, right? And so what you could do, is this a directional light? No, I wouldn't do that. Oh, okay. Let me shut this off real quick. So when I unfurled the objects here, decorative glass subdivision. So it's more of a decorative one. Light bulb mounting. Let's just start going down in deep. Light bulb group. Bulb. Bulb base. You would have to create a light in here. And the type of light I think you would want to do is like maybe a target light, because these are kind of directional objects. Let me see. The light target I would push down to be on the ground. I would probably go into here and make sure that it's, grab the actual light itself, pull out of the scene. Bring that above. So that's the front view. Very tippy top. Let's kind of look into this view right here. Right, these are different views that you can access by, so you can switch in between these views, you guys, by hitting the function keys at the top of your keyboard. So F1 is your just perspective view. F2 is your top down. F3 is your right view. F4 is your front view. F5 is all of the views, and F6 is to like reverse your timeline. So F1 through F5 is what you kind of want to get to, which I think F4 is the one I wanted to be at, to drop this all the way down to where it would be, and I would make this smaller. You could also use, I think, just like a regular light in here as well. So if you wanted to just kind of have it illuminate a little bit, and then we would zoom in, I would probably go to my regular perspective view, zoom in on it, make sure that this light object is down here on that light bulb. See, this is why moving things, so you don't want to grab off to the side and start moving things, because you're going to have issues like that, because I can do this, but then when I go into my orthogonal views, all these different views together, you can see that I've moved it in really weird areas. And so when you guys are moving objects around, and I'm sure you kind of figured this out while doing this project, grabbing these coordinate arrows is the smarter way to go. Now there's these little corner arrows right here where you can grab it and move it in two different planes, but it's going to lock it. It's going to lock your movements to those two planes only. So this one would be the X and the Z plane, right? So it would lock it to only being able to move it on the X and only being able to move it into Z space. This one right here would be X and Y space, right? And so you want to make sure that you're kind of just grabbing things appropriately. And if you're not sure, just one movement at a time. It makes it easier, right? Because if not, then look how far away all of a sudden I am from the lights. And I would have had no idea that I were this far away from the lights unless I started kind of moving my camera in a different view. It looked like it was right on top of it, but it was not. All right, let me move this over here. We easily got way off target just by grabbing it and moving it around like that. And so placing it, I think this will possibly work. Let's see. Then you want to grab this light and you want to go into general, and then you can use the temperature here. You can mess around with the light intensity. You could say you want it to be an omni light, a spotlight. You can change the type of light it is down here. An infinite light, which means it infinitely gives out light over area, which would be the sun, right? The sun is an infinite light, so stay away from that one. An area light, usually we're going to use the omnidirectional, right? So if I were to Command R, it should have shown up on here. It might not, because I don't have a bunch of stuff in the, let's throw a box in, throw a cube into space. Okay, let's see. Oh, let's turn this into a thing. We're going to grab the panels. This one, and we're going to delete them. And then we've got like this area. Take this cube and move it forward in space. You can see that there's light happening on here. If I hit Control R, now you have that render there, right? The only thing is it doesn't look like it's really coming directly from that, from the exact light source there. Like if I hit, you can see that there is like a light source coming from this area. Obviously it's lighting up like the back of this glass. Even though the light that we created is inside of that light bulb. Let me see if we can bring it into the light bulb directly. So Let's bring it into our lights group. And let me bring it down under the glass of the one that we're working on. Where is that one? It's a lot to look at. So if you have to just kind of bring things back up to that one's the wrong one. That one's the wrong one. Let's move this back out so we don't get to light group 0, which is that one, which is, this is an instance, right? So whatever we do to this one will work with all the rest of them. Remember how we learned about the instances versus copies. So whatever I change in this one is going to change to the rest of them. So let's go into this light group and that's the decorative glass on the outside. Maybe we can change the transparency of this glass. Let me see here. You can see kind of what's happening in your actual material in the material editor right here. So you can kind of see what's going to happen to your material when you're changing settings down here. So that maybe was at 100. So let's try bringing that down to 50. Let's see if I can hit. That kind of didn't really do much as far as the transparency. I think that's... maybe it did. Let me see. Let's see. 5%. If you want to know what it does, drop it down large amounts. So it didn't do anything to that. Let's increase that. Right click, show help, and we can read exactly what it does. The Fresnel reflectivity controls the strength of the reflections, right? So it's not how transparent our object is, but how strong the reflections are on that object. Maybe it would probably be show help. Let's see what this one does specifically. Refraction object. So that's like the light coming through, how it bends through the object. Let's see if the blurriness. Honestly, it's not that we need to be messing around in as much as it's like the actual light bulb, the glass. Okay, not that. Light bulb and mount group. The bulb itself. Let's see here. This is the reflectance of the object, right? Let's see if we took on transparency. There we go. It kind of gives us a brighter, like you can see it's a little bit brighter here within that. And then you can change the light itself, right? If you change the light's intensity, higher intensity. Can you do higher? Yes. And you get more of like a light bulb actually like emitting light from the bulb area. So you just want to make sure that you've got your light in the appropriate spot, right? So then I would probably move this down to where the actual bulb is so that it doesn't get lost in the mix if I ever decided to move that. And then you can make this an instance In fact, here, look, it already looks like we have multiple instances of it. It looks like you're going to actually have to make each one an instance, like the light, or you could duplicate the light and put it in there that way. But yeah, a way to make some lights, adding lights into your objects, right, is just by adding them into the already created object in here. You're just kind of modifying it, right? You're adding to it. Let's go to your next question real quick.
Saved. Going back to the saving project with assets question, in the text folder, I didn't see any any of the furniture assets that I used, just the materials and the textures. Am I supposed to see furniture in here?
No. So that's like
And
wrapping
also,
around
when
the
I in
objects.
the assets folder
The
in the
It's wrapping around the objects. The objects are going to be geometry right here, right? These are going to be your there's a name for these shapes too. They're called primitives. Uh so it's going to be like primitives added into your uh, scene, right? So it's going to look at them like a primitive that has those textures and those bump maps and stuff on top of them. So it won't look like an actual couch. It's just going to save all of the materials and the textures and everything that goes along with it onto that. To make an instance of something, I think you can just, if you're ever wondering how to do that kind of stuff, right? If we wanted to make an instance of this cube, I would select the cube and you can hit that Shift C and type in instance. And you'll click on that. And then you will drop that underneath the cube. And then I think you can move that to the side. Ooh, let's see here. Cube instance. Is it going to work? Cube. Moving the cube. Let's delete this real quick. Okay, so that's how. So you just make sure that your object is inside of the instance right there, and it'll create instances for you. And then what they had done is they had hit C on there to make it an actual editable object. So then it, you know, or their instance just didn't have that. You can do that though, so that you have like full separate control of the object. But if you don't, if you still want it to just be an instance, which is a smart way of working, you just put that right into there and it works that way. We'll finish up your
assets
question here.
browser, when I tried to use one of these decorative boxes, it didn't work when I clicked and drag. So I clicked on this tiny icon here.
Oh yeah,
and
some of them don't work.
went to this window where it basically said that if you don't have Maxon 1, the license, it wouldn't work. But I think I do have the Maxon 1 license.
You have the Maxon 1 student
So is
license.
there a way to be able to access this decorative box asset?
So the student license
And
is...
I think that's all my questions.
Good questions. Lots of good questions there. So when you're opening your Maxon account, or you go into your, I think it's actually under here. It's just a student 1. So it's not actually oh gosh, come on, release that. I don't need that one. Okay, let me bring that over here. It says Maxon 1 student, which limits you with the assets that you can actually have in your thing. I forgot to mention that to you guys. I apologize if some of them don't work. It's because you're supposed to have a full license. So they give you, as a student, they give you some things, but they don't give you access to all of them, which does suck. But yeah, good questions there, Lena. All right, we have Nakara. Nakar's question. You're in the chat still,
In the
huh?
industry, what program do they use mostly for 2D animation? The reason I ask being that the only animation I've ever done or practiced even before this class was purely 2D, and it's mostly my focus. So, yeah.
Cool. 2D animation is done. It just kind of depends on what you're actually doing in 2D animation. In my field, I use After Effects all the time. Like I'm daily in After Effects for, 8 hours a day. If not that, I'm working in Premiere Pro because I do video editing as well. Um, so After Effects for what I do for motion graphic designers mostly, like animators, character animators, use Adobe Animate. There's also some other Adobe, or there's also some other programs that people use. Oh shoot, what did I hit? F11. Let's get out of that. Uh there was this one that's coming out for all of you guys to know. I just found out about this last week. But Procreate, okay, because Procreate's becoming more and more popular in the field of like animation, hand drawn animation and stuff. And there's some animators that work in here and test it out. And Procreate Dreams is coming out, I think, in November. And it's specifically for a hand drawn animation, which is amazing because the amount of brushes and stuff that you have available at your fingertips inside of Procreate is so much fun already. But now they're actually making an actual animation app for you, which is it. I'm excited about it because Adobe has options to use apps on machinery like tablets, right? So on my iPad, I have Premiere Rush, which is the app version of Adobe Premiere. And then there's like Adobe Illustrator, and they don't have After Effects for it. Um, they don't really have Adobe Animate for it yet. So Adobe really has been slacking on the application side of animation tools. They do have it for Photoshop. I would say Photoshop is probably the strongest one. Illustrator after that, and even those two kind of suck. So to be honest with you guys, and so um, Procreate's been like a big one for people because it's just so fluid. It's built for the iPad. It's a great um it has great motions and gestures that you can use while drawing. It's very fluid feeling. It feels like you're on paper. And now they're doing one dedicated to animation. So I'm really excited to see the kind of stuff that comes out of like the kind of work that people do in that. So if you guys are interested in like doing a 2D one that's beyond After Effects, that's hand drawn, I would look into Procreate if you have an iPad. I don't know if they're going to offer the app across any other devices. So, like if you have an Android tablet, I'm not sure if they're going to offer it across like Android tablets. Mostly Apple works really well is because they have the Apple Pencil. Um, so if you have the opportunity, I would possibly think about investing into that if you want to do like 2D stuff because I think it's going to be really powerful. I know that Procreate for at least the regular drawing app allows like lifelong updates to it. So if this is going to be the same thing for the Animate one, by all means, I would definitely recommend, getting that and trying to play around with it. Character animations and stuff like that for like professional studios would use it Animate. Also programs. Let's look some other ones that I think I mean, they use Autodesk, obviously, Character Animator, which is also an Adobe product. So it's not the AN, but there's Adobe Character Animator, which the icon has a CH on it, which you guys get. So if you want to open that up, you can always get that there. Uh Tunes. That's one, yes, I've heard of people using TOONZ. Obviously Blenders, 3D, Cinema 4D is 3D. TV Paint animation. That's an old school one, but I've heard of people using that one. So yeah, there's like a plethora of different animation programs. And what I want you guys to keep in mind, right, is you don't have to stick to one program. You guys can always jump around and use different programs. Um, Obviously, for class, we get the opportunity to use these professional grade programmings, right? With the Adobe Suite and Cinema 4D, those are what people at the higher levels use, but it doesn't mean you can't animate with other programs that work just fine. The basis knowledge of animation is what you hold on to. Learning the interface of a program is something easy, right? You can't just learn the interface of a program and then just know how to animate. You have to understand the basics of animation first, and then you go into these programs and you're like, oh, okay, it's just same stuff, just named differently, moved into different places. So that's really all it is. Jesus.
Hello. There was a little confusion on this assignment, the real and surreal one, where in the video you asked us to turn it into like several images sequences, but in here you told us to make it a MP4. I was just confused as to were we supposed to make those images in After Effects?
Yes, correct. So you're going
Were we supposed
to, in the, let me go here to that module. You're going to collect those. So you, in order to render it from Cinema 4D, you have to create the PNG sequence, and then you bring that PNG sequence into After Effects, and then you render it out as a video. So that's what you need to do, and that's the reason. Like, I created the PNG sequence, but then on there was a video about um creating, like, compositing everything together. Go back into it. Animating the scenes, viewport render. I thought I had one about compositing. Well, for all of your Cinema 4D projects, you're gonna have to composite them into After Effects and then render it out as an MP4. So I didn't post the video onto that module, but that's just what you guys are doing from here on out with inside of Cinema 4D. So I'm sorry I didn't clarify that for you guys, but yes. So you'll export a PNG sequence, and then you're going to import that PNG sequence into After Effects and export it as an MP4. All right, Melissa.
Hello. My question is how to make this a lot smoother, because the more I drag it out, it doesn't make it smoother, it makes it more curvy. And I was wondering if there's a way to fix that. Thank you.
Let me see what you have going here. So, is this a dolphin asset? Let's see this. Let's delete this stuff in here. Let's go into asset processor. Dolphin? I don't see anything. Is this a model you did on your own? I'm curious. Usually what you do is you put it into a subdivision surface, and that helps to smooth things out. Like if I were to throw a cube, if I were to take this cube primitive and let me see. If I were to take it into and put it into a subdivision surface right now, right? So let me kind of close this off and take a subdivision surface, and you drop that cube into it. It is going to make a ball. Well, obviously I had accidentally made it not a perfect cube shape, but it's a ball here. Let me bring my video down so you guys can see. This one's best for me right over here right now. Let me do this again so you guys can see. delete this, bring a cube in, go to this area here, which is a modifier, and then I'm going to click on subdivision surface, and then I'm going to take this cube and make it a child of the subdivision surface. And so that's going to smooth it out, right? Now, all of a sudden, I have a sphere with that. The cool thing about this, right, is the more segments that I add to this here, to the cube itself, right, I have more and more segments on here, which gives me more and more geometry, right? It's going to affect the way that subdivision surface is affecting the actual shape. Inside of the subdivision surface, you can increase this is the viewport. So this is how many you're actually seeing, and this is actually how many it's going to be in the render, right? So you want to keep those relatively, like if your computer's like chugging really slowly, you can drop this down and it won't look that great. But when you go to render it out, it's going to be usually better. Let me see, because that was a viewport check I was doing, but when you go to render it, it's going to have more subdivisions on there. But yeah, that's essentially how you're going to smooth that out is, and so if you wanted it, if it's like just curving it more, I would maybe add some more subdivisions to your primitive or your object that you had in there at first. I don't know where did dolphin, was it a dolphin statue? I spelled dolphin, right? Let me type in animal. Yeah, I do not see a dolphin in here. Yeah, let's just say that this cube is a dolphin. I would just, you've got your dolphin here. I would just increase the amount of inside of your object segments there are on your object, because it's going to give that subdivision surface more data, more faces, more polygons. All of these, it's going to give that the opportunity to smooth those over. But the less of this there are, the more like basic the shape is going to be. So I would just increase these segments inside of your primitive or whatever shape, your main shape. If it was something that you initially had if you like did this, built this dolphin all by yourself, I would go back and before you make this an editable object, you want to increase the amount of segments. Then once you got a lot in there, you'll turn that into an editable object, and then you can start messing around with the shape until you get it what you like, and then you can put it on put a subdivision surface as the parent. If you're just curious, you guys don't want to see, like if you want to go back and forth, first of all, that's a wrong order. Let me bring this out of here. When it comes to these right here, which this is just the subdivision surface, but these, I just call them modifiers. I know that's not the exact name for them. I can figure out the correct vernacular and give you guys that information. But these ones, the green ones, have to be the parent, right? So I have to drop my object into that layer. But these purple ones, these deformers down here, these ones have to be a child of the object itself. And you can stack these around so you guys can start playing with this kind of stuff. But yes, that's what I would do, is increase the segments there. Good question though. Let me know if that works for you, Melissa. All right, Josh.
Hi. I don't really have a question on the assignment, but if you had to do a project, would you prefer to do surreal or realism?
It's kind of hard. I'm very I'm the type of person that can look at an object and draw it and it looks like that object. Realistic. My neighbor who's an artist, he's the type of person that can think up something crazy and illustrate it and it's there and it's on paper. So you know, if I had to do something, I think my strongest suit would be realism, but I think surrealist project would actually challenge me more. And like to be challenged with that because then I learn. When you're challenged in any kind of field, right, is when you learn and you grow from that. So I actually would probably like the surrealist one because it'd be harder for me. Good, cool question. Haven't been asked that before. Natalie.
Hello, just had a couple questions for this week, as in mostly for this card right here. Um, with the angle I had it for
Ah, you get a
the
bounce.
the rendering, it looked okay, but then when I zoomed out, it does this. It does this weird loop thing, which since the angle it was, you can't see it, but it goes back and then forward again. I was wondering if can get any help there. Hope.
Yeah, the best way to fix that is to work in those different views like I was saying. So, bringing up these views and I like this option here because I can work in different views directly. So, if I go in here, right? You guys remember the 1, 2, 3 shortcuts. The 1 is to move, right? Your view in here. 2 is to dolly in and out or zooming. I call it dollying, that's the appropriate term. Um, and then rotating or orbiting your camera, right? The view here. But you can also do that inside of these as well. So I can zoom in and out holding those same options. Now, if all of a sudden my view gets all out of whack, I can just go into view and hit the default. Let me see here, frame default, and it's going to reset that back to what I had it like before. And so when you're doing something where there's kind of this crazy movement, it's moving in two different spaces at once. I would go into this like orthogonal view and work this way. So the front of this is your front view. So let me turn this around to what it would look like. This would be your front view, right? The front. Your top view would be, in fact, it would be easier if we used an object that wasn't symmetrical. So let's use cone will be perfect for this. Actually, yeah, a cone should work. Yeah. So maybe there's something else. The figure is going to work better because then you won't have, this is great. Great view. Okay. Let's reset this camera here. And so I've got my perspective view. This is obviously top down. If you've got your camera above the object, that's what you're seeing right here. And I can zoom into this more and I can obviously tell that. This is my front view. This is if I were looking directly and standing in front of my object and I have the front view to look at. This is the right side of my object. So if I zoom in here, you're going to see that the geometry is from the side view of the object. These ones can change here as well. So if you're like, oh great, I can see the right, but what about the left? You can go into view, display. Which one is it? Cameras, and you go to left and it'll switch that side. But notice you can tell, right, where your coordinates on your little gizmo here, this little guy, these guys, that's how you can tell which direction you're looking at. Also, up in the corner tells you what angle you're looking at your object from. So I'm going to change it back there. You can also do bottom and stuff in that. So you have the ability as well, if you don't use the shortcut keys, like if you're working on a laptop and you have a limited amount of space or you're working kind of in a tighter view, you can always use these as well to move, dolly, and rotate or orbit, right? So you have that option as well. But I would animate that in those views so that you can see what's happening. So from a side
So you
view
can
and then
see
front
these.
view.
Sometimes my
Looks like someone's
OBS is
gone
being
crazy in
funny.
Las Vegas.
They're just moving these dice around would be just making them smoother would help a lot. This is And also, should it make them go faster since I couldn't kind of figure that out?
Faster, remember, faster
Only a
is your
little, but then
keyframes closer
just
together.
redo it again. It's I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, it's okay.
And then
Remember this, if you want to slow your object down, you're going to separate your keyframes away from each other. Similar, uh so opposite of if you were hand drawing it, right? Like if you want to slow an object down when you're hand drawing, you draw the frames closer and closer together, and inside of a program where it does the in-betweens and the keyframing for you, you're going to you're going to pull those keyframes apart to slow the object down, and to speed it up you're going to bring those together, bringing them close together. So that's how you'll control the speed.
Load up.
And you'll control like how it speeds up, how it accelerates, and where it decelerates by how your curve looks, right? So where your keyframes are placed in um like in relation to each other is how fast or slow it's going. Faster, slower, closer together, faster, further apart, slower. And then how your curve looks is going to determine where the peak of that speed is, or where the slowest part of that speed is as well.
Sorry. At least it's better than my previous laptop that probably would have taken a year.
It could have taken a year. This is cool. The
What was
dinosaurs
just when
keep
I
them.
was rendering, I think I can pull up the video in a bit. It was, it was just when it was slowly transitioning like closer that it started to change colors for some reason. It was to these colors and then it went to a whiter tone, but I was just wondering if that was because of the camera or anything.
It could be because of your light.
I'm not
like,
the camera, the lighting, and it just decided
yeah,
to shift real quick.
it could be that.
I think trying to remember. I had one more question. I'm sorry.
If that happened in your render, then it's
I'll send
possibly
you
the
a
lighting.
message whenever I think about it. But this is all the questions I had for this week. Thank you.
Yeah, good questions though, Natalie. All right, we have Jade's question.
Hello, I am Jade. Can you show me how to make the cover of the book? Thank you.
Yeah, so the cover of the book, let's go ahead and similar to a photo, let's go back into our perspective view. I'm going to delete this. Let's bring in a book. View, not view. Book. We'll bring this book in. Thick book. The Dictionary of Animation. The Animation Encyclopedia. That'd be nice. Right, essentially we have that. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this object. Zooming in, change this view a little bit here. And I am going to go into, okay, here's a great instance where I have all of these materials and I didn't put them all there. It came when I brought in other objects, right? But the materials stayed into my material manager. I'm just going to go under, is it under create? No, it's under edit and then delete unused materials, and it'll take anything away that I have it that's not supposed to be on this object right here. You know, so like if you brought a bunch of stuff in and then you took a bunch of stuff out, you can just go under that edit, delete unused materials, and it will remove that and in turn make your file size a little lighter. But let's double click on I'm gonna guess it's the fabric material. Let me quick render that out. Where's this fabric material at? It's this plain one right here. Let's double click on this, and in the reflectance, I don't know why this book is so reflective. Under layer color, texture, I'm going to drag one of these under to that. Let's see if that one works. Let me, Load an image. Nope. That's wrong. Some of these, depending on what the material is and how it's built, will depend on where you put the object, the image, right? So under the reflectance, if I turn that off, I just gonna have this flat looking book. Can I not bring this image? This is a material. Can I just drop this material on there? Oh, this is another. That's one of those. It requires a subscription. So that is probably why that's not working. Let's throw in. Let's just media. Let's not do books. Let's just find a picture. Textures. Let's just take in images. Here, let's type in mountains. Let's find an image online. This will be easier. Mountains. All right, this should work. Saving an image to my desktop. That is not an image file. Come on now. There we go. That's an image file. That should work. Okay. I've saved an image of the mountains to my desktop. Let's go into here under color and let's load an image. Let's go to desktop and grab this and open it and see image is not in the project search path. Do you want to create a copy of the project location? Yeah, we can do that. All right, and so we have the image in here. Let me hit Control R. Let me do this. So I think there's a way to place it directly on the cover. Sampling is how it is sampling, like basically stitching the image together. I don't think I have to really change this. So let me just put it back to where it was. Let me take it out of the texture. Clear that. Let's try and put it under the luminance. Let's try and load an image to this one. Sure. Got to check it on to be able to see it. Is it this one? Basic. No, we don't need to blur it. Edit the image. We don't need to edit the image. Maybe just... So maybe it's not in the luminance. Let's try in the reflectance. Under layer color. So load that image. Sometimes images can be not in Dropbox, desktop. Okay, so this is just in the reflecting. Obviously, it didn't work there. Let's clear that out. I would think the best place that it works is in the color or the luminance panel. Seem to work better with this. As far as like the size, of the image goes in the direction of the image, that's another thing I would have to mess around with. It's not it there. Undo that. Maybe if we hit R, that's going to do the whole entire. Bump map's not it. Let's try it in here. Lots of places where you can load images. That's why I'm saying like it is different for each one. And the problem is because that's obviously not right. And the problem is because it's wanting to wrap that material around. It should be in the luminance panel. This is where it normally would be put into. Let me just try and figure out how to change that around. You can also, right, if you don't want to add an image to it, you could add a different type of like texture to it. Let me see. Surface. You could add like checkerboard, and then you can come in here and you can change colors. You can change the tiling here as well. So you can always just add different textures and stuff onto them this way. Maybe to make the books look a little bit different if you're struggling putting like images into it. Because normally this is where you want to put your images into an object. But like I said, each one is kind of different. I believe that's where you put images inside of the picture frames. On the books might be a little different because of the way the material is wrapping around the book. But yeah, we can work on that more if you give me a specific one. And those images inside of the books, inside of the asset creator right here, those ones that you were looking at were not, they had that label in it, which I just noticed. Book. Where was it? This one might work. Let's try this. Let's double click on this. Go into the luminance and drag this onto here. There we go. That one worked. Shut that reflectance off and you've got a book cover. Seriously, are you reading this? Come on, you guys. I'm just kidding. So some of these work. And it tells you which ones I'll work with. The thick book here. Like if I wanted to grab this one. I didn't see these ones before. And just drop it in there. It'll download the assets. It'll throw it in there. And then if I hit Control R, seriously, are you still reading this? So you can just drag them into the luminance panel here. Shut off that reflectance because we don't need it reflecting. I don't know why that was on there initially. So yeah, that'll work that way. And if you wanted like a different, more complex looking image, we have to work on like how that image is brought in and change like the dimensions of the image and stuff like that as well. So that's something to also think about. But yeah, these are basically easier way to do that. Let's move on to Keith.
Hi, I was wondering, when I was doing the surrealism, I was looking for certain objects and I couldn't find out exactly what object I was looking for, but some of the materials or objects had different like symbols. Like for example, I just found out recently this one was like a subscriber symbol, which makes sense with the square. But there's another one that didn't have a red square and it had like kind of like a scroll or like a
you had the same
piece
issue,
of paper kind of symbol on the side. I wasn't really sure what that was, so I kind of avoided it. Another question is I didn't know how to send my file in, so I sent a zip because that was the only thing that Canvas seems to take for me. I'm not too certain if I did that incorrectly or
No, that's
if
okay.
there's another way of sending it. I didn't know.
No,
So
Casey,
I
you're
just kind
good.
of like wanted to know for later on how to properly send the files next time for the next assignments.
Zip
That's about it.
files?
Thank you.
Zip files good, accepted, fully fine. It's most likely going to make you do that every time. And then, yeah, the same thing. Apparently, that's like this new subscriber thing as well. I haven't seen that one either. So, um, it's a pain. I know you guys. And once you get into the further classes, you'll learn how to model things and do the UV texturing and materials and stuff, which is going to help out a little bit more so that you can custom make those
Right.
things.
So
Here's
obviously
Brian's
for
question.
this week's lesson, I can't really say too much about uh, when went good on the lesson or the project or anything like that, just because I am behind as I've uh, communicated before. I've sent you an email before.
Yeah, I got that email, Brian.
But what
You're
I
all
do
good.
like about our new projects and seemingly going forward is that we do have a lot more creative freedom to make what we want and pretty much just let our imaginations go wild, but still stay within a prompt, especially with something like real versus surrealism that offers a lot of possibilities for artists to really get their creativity out there. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, cool. I'm happy you like
Um,
that. That one,
as for questions, I don't really have any questions.
the next couple of projects are going to be a little less creative like that, and you're guys going to be following kind of what I do step by step. But with that being said, like you can take with whatever within the rules of the project and like find ways to make it more interesting looking. Um, but you got to stick within those rules, right? And don't veer too far off, or then things start to get all sorts of crazy. But it'll get more into those kind of projects a little later on as well.
Right now, but just wanted to state that I do think that our lessons are going forward, going in a good manner, and I just like the fact that it seems to be that we're going to be able to do a lot more creative things without sticking too much to a prompt or something like that. And as I said, I appreciate that, and I'm pretty sure other students in the class also appreciate the chance to really flex their own skills.
Yeah, and this one was fun because it was very like I said, very much like, oh, I want to set up a room. Like, how nice is this look? So, but thanks. Let's go to Jasmine.
Hello. So I just started my project like right now, so I don't have many questions, but something that came up right here. I don't see the object tab in here. And does that matter? Do I have to have the tab selected? Because like every time, everything that I type in here will appear. So I don't know if that matters. If it does, then how can I bring it to this area? And that's my question.
So the
Thank you.
objects are, yeah, they'll just show up here, right? Like if it's a it'll tell you what it is. Like right here it says model. If it's a photo, it'll say image. Images are grouped under media, right? So videos as well. You can throw videos into um onto these, right? Like if you had a television, you could put an animated video onto that. And so that's playing in the background. Um Materials, like some things will show up as materials, some things are going to show up as models. So this in particular one is a model, and you just click and drag it into there. And then like we're running into the issue where some of them are only for subscribers and not others and stuff, so we'll just have to avoid certain ones in there. So we're just working within the bounds of what the asset browser is kind of allowing us to use. And then if you guys have any modeling experience beyond that, you can try and model certain things. But at this point, you guys don't have that from this class. So I'm not expecting it to be like a full on massive. Like, you guys are filling it up with quite a bit of stuff, though. Like, I'm looking at these and I'm like, there's a lot of stuff to use, right? I think there's game controllers and stuff in there that you can still use. So, um, just trying to figure that out. It's going to be harder to fill the room, if it's like a bigger, like I noticed like the grand piano, like is this a living room or something? You might find it a little harder to fill some of the spaces. So maybe in a smaller room might work a little easier if you're having that trouble finding assets within the asset browser. But yeah, you're doing good. Good start on that. Tristan.
Hello. When I was trying to submit the assignment for today, I noticed there was something called a project group that said it before I was trying to submit it, because it was like, keep in mind, this is gonna be submitted for like the whole like project group or something like that. So I was just wondering what exactly like that is, and does that mean that we're gonna be does that mean we're gonna be like having whole groups too?
No, that might have just been something you might have been in there
Thanks
while I
for
was
answering.
editing something, which is sometimes perfect timing, right? Like if I'm in the middle of editing something, or if I accidentally hit um a button and then I have to go back and undo it. So if it's not in the module right now, no. We don't have any group projects currently, because it's really hard when you're working online to kind of coordinate those projects unless you guys can all meet up or have like uh video chats and stuff at the same time, but you guys would have to coordinate that stuff. So as of right now, we don't do group projects in here. Plus, when you go to get a job, it's nice to be able to say, hey, I created all of that, and it wasn't a group project where they're like, well, what part did you do in that group project? And then a lot of the times what we have happen is, we've tried group projects in the past, and then one person will do a majority of the work and the other person doesn't do a lot, and so that becomes an issue as well. So we no group projects, just taking accountability for what you send in is really where we're able to see your guys' growth and stuff. Lily.
Okay, so the one question I have for this week is regarding putting on the wallpaper into my room.
Yeah, wallpaper is
For some
weird.
reason, like I'll go to like polygons and then I'm on my move tool and I'll select the wallpaper I want. And I don't get like when I hover over the walls, nothing like, how like it like will like kind of highlight it or darken it. I don't have that, and it makes like just the entire room the wallpaper. And the same thing happened when I tried to put in like flooring. The flooring went onto the wall on the three walls too. So I don't know if I'm missing something, but I have the polygons tool selected, the move tool, and then I had my wallpaper, so I wasn't sure how to fix that.
If you're dropping the material onto the object as a whole, right, it's gonna drop that material onto the entire object. So let's delete this real quick, the thick book. We'll delete these, delete, and we'll throw this in here again, zooming out, choosing a different angle that's a little bit easier to look at. And let's turn this into an editable object. So I'm going to hit C. I'm going to grab my polygon mode, and I'm going to delete the top and the front. So I got some walls and I have a floor, right? And so what I want to do is I'm going to select this one right here. And then I'm going to go into like wood floor. Just type in floor. And then I will take the floor material and drop it directly onto that highlighted. It has to be highlighted. And you have to drop it directly onto that area. And so that is the way it will only do the, you don't want to grab the move tool, right? This doesn't matter, right? Because I'm not moving the floor. So you just want to make sure that once you put it into an editable mode, that you grab that polygon tool and then you click these first, and you're going to highlight these that you want to, it's just telling the computer, hey, when I add my material, only add it to these sides. And then when I go into wallpaper, brick wall, right, I can just drag and drop it onto that, and it's only going to apply it to the sides. Now, how do you know that that's working? Up here, when we're looking into our, let's let that apply real quick. Takes a second to get in there. I would change the tiling on this, obviously. But notice that there's these different tags here that show this right here is going to tell you that there's a specific polygon with this material on it. And that this material is applied to other polygons. So I think if I grab these, I think this will work. If I double click on these little polygons, it'll tell you which ones have which material applied to it. It'll highlight that polygon for you. And so that's how you apply different materials to the floor versus the walls. But yeah, again, we'll just do that real quick. I'll delete this, create a cube, make it editable by hitting C, making sure that I grab this polygon tool up here, grabbing the ones that I don't want, hitting delete, grabbing the ones that I do want, holding down shift, and dragging that material onto those highlighted sections. Again, highlighting the floor and dragging that material on there. So that is how you apply them to separate sections of your object. Yeah, that is the end of the questions for the submissions that we got for the participation questions. Good questions though. You guys lasted an hour and a half, so there's a lot for us to learn from there. The more students there are in class, the longer those questions end up being, especially when there's like technical stuff that has to be taught. So way to hang in there, everyone in the live chat. How are we doing in the live chat? Are you guys learning a lot? You still awake? I'm going to kind of start getting, while you guys are answering that, I'm going to prep a file for us to start our new lesson. So I'm going to go into the fall one. I'm going to go here and I'm going to copy and paste this and I'm going to rename it. I'm going to 04. Great. Of course, I would do that. In After Effects. All right. Now everything's kind of ready. I am going to open After Effects file. Yeah, it is nice to, well, when you hear other people's questions, first of all, you realize that you're not alone and a lot of people struggle with very similar stuff that you're struggling with. I'm not going to know the answer to all of your questions all the time. I wish I could, but sometimes it takes me a while to look things up or figure it out. And then once I figure it out, like I said, I'll usually make a video answering that question. But yeah, you do learn a lot from other people's issues that they have. You're like, oh wow, like I'm learning extra about this project that I didn't know. And that kind of stuff is going to come in handy later on down the line when we're deeper into projects, right? So I'm going to create a new project here. I'm going to save as right away and going into the one I just made. And I'm going to rename this Kara. I'm just going to name it that, Principles of Motion Design. In fact, we can group this week's and next week's project into one folder here. So you can do in After Effects and C4D if you guys want to get like technical on this so you guys know where your projects are later. But we're going to do the same. So basically what we're doing this week is we're going to focus on mass and weight of objects plus impact. So we're going to focus on different principles of animation. What is it? It's squash and stretch. We're going to do another series of that. We're going to do a scene that displays weight of an object or the mass of an object, and then the other scene's going to demonstrate impact and anticipation, really. And so we're going to do it in two different ways. We're going to do one this week in After Effects, and then next week we're going to repeat it, but doing it in Cinema 4D. So you guys just have a chance to work a little bit in After Effects and a little bit in Cinema 4D, working within the same type of project. So it's going to feel a little repetitive, but it like we're trying to get these principles of animation to really sink into what you guys are, into your knowledge bank. We want these ingrained into your brain. So let me real quick go into here, and I'm gonna open up this project for you guys to I'm gonna publish it for you guys to see. And then we're gonna go over it here, and then hopefully we'll get to one of them at least. All right, so we've already talked a lot about I took more time at the beginning of the semester before we got to this project to talk about the principles of motion design, because I really wanted you guys to kind of get a grasp on that before you started your first projects, and have these things in mind while you're animating. So these are back here as just a kind of a repeat for you guys to look at. Now, Jorge Canedo, he took those 12 principles and he distilled them down into 10. Totally fine, because they're just like a couple of them are very similar to each other, like follow through and overlapping actions should be in a similar thing. So he just kind of groups things together. They might have different names, timing versus, timing and spacing here, and easing, different easing. But this is a great gift to keep on hand. If you guys want to keep it, you just right click and save the image as, and you can save that for you guys on your desktop or wherever, so you guys can just have this handy. Again, I have linked The Illusion of Life by Disney animators Ollie Johnston and Frank Thomas, who are the original Five Old Men. I think it's Five Old Men. Let's see. The Five Old Men? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. The eight. The nine. Nine. Learn to count, Amanda. Yes. The Nine Old Men. So Frank Thomas, Ollie Johnston wrote this book for us to enjoy. Here's an Amazon link if you want to find it. I know that Keith, I believe, said that this book, you guys have a lot of these at your store. So if anyone wants to link up with Keith on Slack, you can just send him a message and be like, hey, where's your store? I want to swing in and pick this book up if you guys want to, because it's a little bit harder to find online. But yeah, check that out if you guys want to. As far as the lesson goes, right here, what we're talking about, mass anticipation and squash and stretch inside of After Effects. We are going to do 3 different scenes, and then adding a title scene to it as well. So we're going to have a light and a heavy bounce. Oops. Here, let me shut my caps locks off. We're going to have a light and a heavy bounce. We are going to have a light and a heavy impact happening, and 2 different techniques to use to create squash and stretch. Now, we've already done squash and stretch inside of After Effects, so it's going to be a repeat of that. And then I'm going to show you a different way to do it inside of After Effects as well, using path animations, which is a little bit different. Not any one technique is correct, right? You can get to the same ending with different routes to get there. None of those routes are incorrect, but depending on what your desired output is going to be, is what is going to determine kind of which path you should take, which is the most logical path you should take to get to that desired output, right? And so we're going to be at least hitting on one of these today. Clicking on the YouTube links and not the thing. Here's an assignment overview from last time. Here is how to do the light ball and the heavy ball. Notice that when I type in the scenes, like there's titles to each scene. I put in there for the mass or the weight one, I think I put bounce. Just put in there as the writing, put mass or weight so we know what it is. Let me change that real quick. So that you guys aren't putting bounce, because then it's not cohesive with what we're focusing on. Let me see here. Weight or mass. Bounce is not the... I don't know, whatever. It makes sense for me now. I might change the wording on that later, but it doesn't need to be underlined or bolded. Let's just turn it red so you guys read it. There you go. Lena asked, so would you want all 3 scenes? Yes, 1 video. In fact, let me kind of close this out. Let me save it. Oh, by the way, Tristan, this is what I probably hit and then had to undo. So I'm like, wait, this is not a group assignment. So that was, what was it? It was, anyways, how to use the heavy ball and the light ball, how to do the impact scene in different ways. This has been done several times, over a couple semesters. And so sometimes we create a hammer, like a swinging hammer that hits a ball that impacts another ball, or sometimes we use like another ball as a projectile that hits a secondary ball. So it just kind of depends on what we're in the mood for. But these show different options here. You can do 2 hammers, you can do 2 projectile balls hitting 2 subsequent balls, or you can do a projectile ball and a hammer ball. It doesn't matter. Or and a hammer hitting a ball. Like either way, they work as long as they're showing impact, right? And then 2 different squash and stretch techniques. These were done by Dr. Farina, but I'm going to be teaching you these as well. Compositing, how, compositing all these scenes together into one video. And making sure that we have at least 3 bounces. There can be more bounces, but at least 3, right? So if your video, if the scene cuts off and there's still bouncing happening, as long as you show 3 bounces in each scene, for any of the bouncing balls ones, then that's great. If it's like the impact one where there's not a bouncing ball, obviously don't worry about that. These are the curves that are used in this project. So I wanted to show you guys a visual on what the curves look like, so you can compare them to kind of what yours look like. They might not be exactly the same, but as long as they're almost the same as these, right, then you should be good. And then here is the squash and stretch one, for the which scene is it? The mass, the impact, and the squashing and stretch scene, right? And then a single MP4 that contains all 3 scenes encoded with the Vimeo or the YouTube 1080p settings from Media Encoder. And then here is what I will be looking for on each of these when I am grading them. If you guys have any questions about this or anything, you can let me know. But this is how I determine your points, right? So if you're missing any of these scenes, you're automatically going to get deducted 20 points, which is going to greatly impact your grade. Because let's say you're missing the squash and stretch scene, but all of these other ones are, you get full points for the rest. I mean, you're already at an 80%. But you can see how if you're missing a scene and then you get points deducted from some of these other sections, how that's going to add up, right? So making sure you're looking at this when you're about to submit it. Lena asked, will I cover how to do all 3 scenes in the streams, or will we have to go back and follow the older videos? I am going to cover all 3 of them. I'm going to do one right now for you guys, and then we are going to work on 2 more on Thursday. And what I can do is I will start with this lesson so that we can do the other 2, and then I'll go into reviewing people's projects. So that way, if you don't want to watch the reviews of people's projects, you don't have to. I really highly suggest you do watch other people's projects being reviewed, because there's going to be things that everyone's going to do, like, I don't want to say wrong, but people will do this, have the same issue with the same sections in their projects. It happens every semester. So some people are like, oh, I did that too. And you'll realize that and you'll be like, oh, let me fix that. Right. So yeah. But let's kind of get started with this. We're going to start by making a title. And so I've got my After Effects file here. I am going to go into the GCC layout here for you guys so you can see, and I'm going to shut my camera off so you guys can see everything that's going on. And let's go ahead and start a new composition. I'm going to name this one Main Comp in 1920 by 1080, 24 frames a second. And this one's going to be the longest composition because we're going to have everything in it. And so I'm probably going to time this to 45 seconds. And I might just trim that time later, which is fine. And I want to create a folder up here, new folder. Let's name this folder comps. Throw that in here just to keep nice file organization. And now I'm going to create a new composition, and I'm going to name this one title. And I'm going to bring this down to probably 5 seconds. It might be shorter than that, but right now we'll just put it at 5. And we will drop this into the comps folder. And then I'm going to add a background into here. So click on my timeline, right click, new, solid. And let's pick a different color. Let's go with, Lena, what's your favorite color? Today we're going to go with Lena's favorite color. And then I'll pick someone else's. We'll do a version of your favorite color. It's going to be like a magenta or possibly a cyan, also known as pink and blue. Blue. Ooh, we have a blue fan. Nice. Same. All right. So let's do a blue. Let's do kind of like an aqua-y blue, maybe. Let's go down here. We're going to make it a little bit darker. I think that's a cool color blue. I'm into it. Lena, you like it? Do you approve? A deep cyan. Thumbs in the chat if you approve of our background color. All right, and so I'm going to, while I find out Lena's approval or disapproval, and if I should just quit my job, I'm just kidding. I'm going to add text into the scene, and I'm going to type in all caps, motion. And then I'm going to go over here and pick an authorized font, which let's go ahead and see. I have them, I think, in my downloads folder. Let's delete that. Approved fonts. Let's go with a sans serif without the feet. Let's do Poppins. So I'm going to type in Poppins. And I want to go bold. And I'm going to increase the size of this. Probably something like that. That's good. Let's turn on the action safe. And I'm going to center this anchor point. So I'm going to hit Y, holding down Shift, and just bring that up here. And Lena approves. Thank you, Lena. I don't have to quit my job. So I'm going to center this in my composition, and then I'm going to duplicate this layer, hitting Control D, and I'm going to write the second one is going to be graphics in all caps, and I know it looks crazy right now. Actually, just one C or no S. And then I'm just going to hit P on my keyboard so it stays in the same X position, and I'm just going to bring it down on the Y. And I want to line these up with the word motion. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to hit Control R on my keyboard. And that's going to bring up, you notice these like ruler options at the top and the side of my composition here. And if you just click over and you drag this ruler to the side, it will drag a ruler like a guide onto your canvas here or onto your composition. And I'm going to drag one on both the side of the M and the side of the N. And then I'm going to double click on the word graphic to highlight it. And I'm just going to decrease this font size just slightly so that it is pretty much lined up with the M and the N. And that means I might have to bring this up just a hair. Let's do 620 because that's a nice even number. And I like it. And that's a good distance in between the two. And then I'm going to duplicate the word graphic. Hit P on my keyboard, drop this down to about the same visually. And I'm going to double click on this word and I'm going to write motion graphics. What do I have on the... Let's see what I have on here real quick. Is it this one? Nope, that wasn't it. I closed it out. Let's look at the module real quick. What did I do before? Motion design principles. Duh. Motion graphic principles. Principles. Okay. And I'm going to change the word graphic. Motion graphic. It can be graphic or design. It doesn't bother me either way. Motion graphic principles. Motion graphics, obviously what we do. I'm going to highlight the word principles and then I'm going to bring this down to right there. And then I'm going to bring it up. So visually, I have a very similar distance between the word motion and graphic and the word graphic and principles, right? So I can use my little cursor here to kind of determine if I'm close to that. Now, this looks fine right now, right? But I'm too low in my composition here, right? In my frame, I want to make sure that these words are kind of centered, like the word graphic is kind of centered in the entire frame. Now, how do I do that? How do I move all of these at the same time without moving them apart from each other, right? Well, we're going to create something called a null, which is essentially a blank layer. It has no information on it, but whatever information you give it, right? So it's just this blank layer, similar to an adjustment layer, but we use them for different things, okay? It's just this blank point in space on in your composition, and we can attach things to it. So I'm going to take, and I'm going to relayer these actually, change the layers. It doesn't matter, but I just want to read it the way I'm reading it on my screen. Motion graphic principles. And I'm going to highlight all three, not holding down caps, but holding down shift. Highlight all three of these layers. And there's this little tiny thing right here. And this is called a pick whip. Let me write that out for you because it is hard. Pick whip. And what this pick whip does is you can click and drag this little icon over to another layer, and it is going to attach whatever layer you clicked it from to whatever layer you dragged it from. This is called parenting and linking inside of After Effects. We're going to learn about this a little bit more later, but right now with all of these selected, I'm going to click and drag. Notice that there's a little blue line that goes along with it to this null, and I'm going to release it. And now what you're going to notice is inside of the parenting area, it initially said none, but now it's saying that all of these layers are going to adopt the same properties that this null layer has, right? So if I were to take this null layer and change the scale of it, it's going to scale all of those layers. If I want to, the only thing it doesn't work with is transparency. That's unfortunately one property that it doesn't work with. But if I wanted to change the position, right, of it, we're going to move that up here and kind of center. Notice your little line in the middle of your title action save. Just kind of visually put the center of the word graphics, this kind of line, invisible line that's there, and line it up with that little crosshair that's in the center. Not the null has an anchor point and it has like a bounding box, but we're ignoring that for the moment, and we're just visually lining up the word graphic in the center of the composition, right? And so I have no need for this anymore, so I'm going to delete that null. And when you delete that null, you're going to notice that it unlinks everything there. And so now I have total control over everything separately. Now, the cool thing about that null, right? Like if I wanted to do that, is I can not only control all of the layers with this null, right? It kind of works like a controller. That's how I kind of want you guys to think about it. But I also still have all of the same properties of these separate layers as well. So not only can I use this to animate things, but I can also use the separate layers on their own. I'm going to just delete this here. And I am going to go ahead and animate this text in. Right now, let's just do, we're going to do a text animator. Let's get used to using these. And we're going to add in here a blur, right? So we're going to increase the amount of the blur here. Let's do 75. And then I also want it to start off transparent, right? So I don't want it to be on screen right away. I want it to start fully transparent and blurry and kind of come into view into a very clear word. And so I'm going to also go to the add, not to the animate property, but I'm just going to add this because I want them to have the same keyframes. I'm going to add an opacity, and I'm going to set that initial opacity to 0 because I want it to start off not on screen. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to unfurl this range selector here, and then unfurl the advanced tab. And I'm going to change this from a square shape to a ramp up, just because I generally like that. And then remember, when doing the, when changing the shape, it is going to change how your offset tab works. And when you're in the ramp up shape, you have to go into the negatives in order for that animator controller, this little guy right here, that this little dude right here, to go all the way to the beginning of the word. And with the square shape checked, the animator at 0%, it doesn't, if you go to -100, it kind of does the opposite there. So you want to make sure that if you're following what I do, you can do ramp up or ramp down. And I'm just going to bring my playhead to the beginning, and I'm going to keyframe the offset starting at -100, right? Because we want to be at the beginning of the word, -100. Then I'm going to move ahead probably 1 full second. I'm very zoomed into my timeline right now, so I can zoom out a little bit more. We only have 5 seconds on the timeline, so that's why you can see the separate frames. And then I'm going to change this to 100. And then we're going to add a little bit of easing down here. So, oh, let me do this real quick. let's add a little bit of ease high and ease low to the text. And so I'm going to increase this to, let's do 20%. And if we bring this into the center, if we bring the playhead into the center, we can kind of see how this easing is affecting the word more. I'm going to bring this up to 70, right? Or 80. We can do 80. There we go. So when I play this, it's just going to kind of fade that on screen by letter, right? By character. But it's blurring it first, which is really cool. Now, the cool thing about that is I can just select this animator here, hit Control C and copy it. And I'm going to move, let's move 8 frames in. And I'm going to paste it onto the word graphic. And then I'm going to move another 8 frames ahead and paste it onto the word principles right there. And so when I play it, motion graphic principles. Let's change this word to design. I think I like the word design more. Undo that. The best thing is this is interchangeable, so I can change the word. The one thing I will have to do now, though, is change the size, obviously. So let's bring that up. We're going to hit the position on the keyboard. In fact, we're going to bring both the word principles and design down so that it's about equal distance. We're moving them just both at the same time to save on time. Right? And then I'm going to save this right here. Could not create file. Principles. File could not be found. Ooh, that's no good. So let's save this again. Save as. And we're going to just navigate over to here. It looks like we're not going to have any time to go over these ones just quite today. So we're going to go over them, all 3 of the scenes, on Thursday because it's already 8:20 here. But at least we're able to like kind of set up get the text on screen, set up the project. So I'll just finish setting up the project, right? I'm going to go into After Effects and I'm going to save it here. Do you want to replace it? Yes, because I got a warning about it, so I'm replacing it. But I'm going to have 3 scenes, right? So let's just drag this title scene in there right away. And the title scene is about 5 seconds long. That should be good. Perfect. And it'll probably end it shorter than that, probably at 4 seconds. But let's go ahead and create our other compositions and just prep them for next week or for next class. So I'm going to add another comp in here and I'm going to name this one Impact. Actually, it doesn't have to be all caps. Impact. Scene or whatever. And then I'm going to increase this to probably, let's do 8 seconds and then we can cut it down as needed. And I'm going to bring, I want the same background in all of my scenes, right? So I'm just going to drag that solid that I created. We can delete this null, but this solid that I created, it automatically saves up here in a folder labeled solids. It does it for you. So you just unfurl that and you can grab your backgrounds. And then let's create a title here. So we're going to type in here impact. And actually, I do not like the black text on here, so I'm going to change this to white. Let's see what white looks like. I don't want a stroke. I just want to fill. And I like the word in white. So we're going to change the title too. And I'm going to change the anchor point here. And then I'm going to center this in my composition. Let's go to the title. I'm just going to uncheck the stroke, change the fill. I hate that it does that every time, but uncheck the stroke, change the fill. And finally, same thing here. Uncheck that, change the fill. All right. I'm going to save my project right now. And then I'm going to create let's create a couple. I'm going to do the projectiles. So I'm going to create one ball here, holding down shift. I'm going to change the color. Maybe to a lighter pink. Probably change the size of the ball. Let's change it down to, let's do 50-50. The properties tab, right, is really nice. Yours might not be right in the same spot, but I can change the size without changing the scale. That's important here, is because if I go onto my layer and I hit S for scale, it's still at 100, which is an easier spot to start at, versus just changing the scale to change the size of the object. The size is a little bit different. It doesn't change the scale of it. It's just changing the original size, right? And so I'm going to name this projectile 1. And I'm going to duplicate this. I'm probably going to bring it down a little bit. So let's hit P on our keyboard, bring up that title action safe. Let's bring this down. Let's type in 300. Let's bring it back. And then bring that down to probably right there. It's about fine. 275 works for me. And then I'm going to duplicate this. And I'm going to hit P on my keyboard and bring this one down below. Probably right around there. So 800. Even there. And then I'm going to create, let's change the color of the second projectile so that we can tell the difference. Let's go for a, shall we do like a bright green? How's that look? That looks good. And then I'm going to create my secondary balls. So the ones that are going to be hit by the projectile, right? So one big one, secondary ball. Let's change the name. 1. And then I'm going to move this down below the projectile 1. So they're kind of in the same spot. And then I'm going to hit the position on this one. And let's get them in the same Y position. So we want this on 275. And actually, let's change the anchor point of this one here. We're going to hold down shift and drop it down. And of the projectile 1. So that we can kind of line them up together, right? So I'm just going to kind of zoom in here so I can get a better look. And holding down shift, I'm going to bring that down here. And get back in my full view. And here is something cool. Again, when you select 2 objects and you go up to your align tab, you have the option to align things from selection. So what you're selected on, or the composition. In this case, we want them selected at the same. And I'm going to hit align to bottom so that the bottom of the projectile and the bottom of the secondary ball are in alignment with each other. And then what I'm going to just do is hit V, and I'm going to bring this one back up so that they are, let's see here. What can I do here? 325. Oh, that was wrong. 325. 325. There we go. So they're at the same, and it's an even number for me there. And then this one I'll put 1600. So it kind of moves it over a little bit more. And then let's change the color of this one to a darker purple color, right? So this color can kind of coordinate up. We'll change it to like a darker version. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same thing, duplicate the secondary ball because they're in the perfect position that I want. And I'm going to bring it below my projectile 2 and hit P on my keyboard because I want to bring this Y value down to 800. We're going to change the color to this color and then make it a little darker. There, that works. That's actually kind of hard to see. Remember, guys, contrast is important. So let's make it a little bit even darker. Drop the saturation, increase the saturation. Can just leave it about there. I think that looks darker. It's a little bit easier to see. This one, okay, we want to align them again. Let's not forget to do that. So we might have to change the position again, but that's okay. I'm going to hit Y on my keyboard and holding down shift, bring this down to the bottom. And selecting both the secondary ball and the projectile and aligning the selections to each other. There we go. And then I'm going to type in the exact size. So 825 will work because that's pretty much what it almost went to. 825. There we go. And I still want to change the color of this ball to something a little bit darker. And then maybe just bring up the type of green. It is a little bit more. Man, I hate that color. Shall we go with orange? It's a little bit easier to see there. And then I'll change this one to, I bet it yellow will be good. Sorry, guys. I just want to think design. Remember, design. Yellow's good. That stands out. Because blue and orange are complementary colors, so when they're over top of each other, they vibrate. And we do not want that, so I think that's good there. I'll save this, and this one's all pretty much set up. I think I want to move this one down a little bit more. So let's move them down to, so that this is a little bit further away from the T. And so I'm going to just bring it down a little bit more. Let's go to 900. Oh, whenever you have two layers selected and you type in it manually, it's going to change the X value as well. So let's just do it separate. 885, that's fine. It's an even round number. 885 works for me. All right, so this one's set up. And now let's go into comps and let's set up our other one. So we got impact. Let's do weight. And hit OK. And drag this in. And I'm going to copy the word impact into here. And I'm going to double click on here and just change the word to weight. Now I still have to make sure that my it looks like my anchor point is pretty centered on the word, but the word isn't centered in the composition. So I just want to make sure that I do that again. Bring that up. I don't know why that alignment isn't working, so I'm just going to tap this up. Manually type in the center, which is 960 by 540, right? There we go. And then I am going to create two larger balls. Let's go ahead here. I'm going to keep the colors consistent. Holding down shift. Moving that over a little bit, probably up in this area right here. And we'll label this one heavy ball. So we're just doing pre-project setup, right? And then I'm going to check the position, 315, 385, 285. Yeah, that's fine. Perfect. And then I'm going to duplicate this one and hit P and just move the X value over. But we want to, ooh, I didn't realize we're going to delete this duplicate and we're going to change the anchor point on this one. So Y, and we still want it at the bottom, right? Because this is going to be a bounce, and the bounce is going to happen at the bottom. So now I can check the position of it and retype in 275 by 275. That works for me. And now I can duplicate this and hit P and bring this all the way over till it's about in the similar spot. And I'll just change this to 1640 and rename the layer to light ball. And we're almost set up there. Let's just get this one colored down differently. So I'm just going to copy this fill color. Control C, copying the hex code. And then I'm going to go to the light ball and change that color here. Your guys' colors can be different, right? Just keeping in mind design. And then our final scene, which we will duplicate this weight scene, this weight composition up here, because the only thing we're going to change is the word for the next one. So I'm going to, up in here in my project panel, I'm going to select that, I'm going to select the composition and I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate it. And this is going to be different because it's named weight 2, but we're going to up here hit enter or return, and we're going to rename this one squash and stretch, or squash. Squash will work. Squash. And then under your squash composition, you're going to just change the title to squash. Not spell it like that. SH. There we go. Then we're going to check the anchor point. Looks centered, and the word looks centered as well. Oh, so let's go ahead and bring that back. 960, 540. There we go. All right, and I'm going to save that. And so now our project's all set to start on Thursday, so we don't have to worry about that. The titles, the title of, there's like a main title that's going to happen where it's going to just introduce the project. And then these ones are not going to animate on from the different scenes. They're just going to be there, right? We're just going to fade this scene on and it's going to tell us what we're looking at. So it's going to be like, oh, we're going to be watching an impact here, right? So you don't have to animate these words on. We just want to animate the title of the entire video on. And so you can animate it like this, or you can animate it in a different way that you've learned. But we definitely want this first one to be on long enough that we can read it, right? Inherently, the other scenes will be on long enough that we can read it, and we're only going to read it for a split second because it's one word, and then we're going to be looking at the action that's happening around it. But we're going to stop here for tonight, so just kind of prep your file for on Thursday, and we're going to first go through all of the scenes, and then I'm going to start talking about the projects that you guys submit and reviewing those. So at least that will get to them, all of the scenes right away. It shouldn't take as long as like reviewing projects and going over questions is. But all right, guys, other than that, I hope you guys have a good night. Have fun prepping for spooky season. I'm gonna get you guys all excited about that. Do you guys have any questions in the chat before I go? Do you guys like my super cool background? I really wish I could work in this environment every day. If I could sit in a pub that has a roaring fire and like adventurers coming in all over the place, telling tales, drinking mead, eating cheese on bread. It all sounds super fun to me. I think you're the only one with me today, Elena, the rest of the time. No questions. Yeah, of course. Obviously, thank you guys for class because you're the ones that sign up and stay in here. But I just want to let you guys know you guys are doing really well, okay? Like everyone's doing good. You guys are at the right spot. There's no one's really falling super behind. So, just keep up the hard work. You guys are doing good. You're asking the right kind of questions. And everyone's being very communicative, which is something I appreciate. So, all right, you guys have a good night. I will talk to you later. I'm going to go eat some spaghetti right now. So, bye, guys.